So I will start recording now. Hello, this is week 5 of the Cognitive Rehabilitation course. I missed out a couple of the earlier slides, but please forgive me. And so here we're starting off with the flow of cognitive processes model. We talked about alertness and sleep and spoons, like those energy points. So we can see here is if you are not sleeping well, you are not alert, and these are you're already starting off with very little spoons.
Question.
Yes, yes, sir.
Let's say you start with 10 spoons for the day,
Yes,
and getting out of bed is 1 spoon, I think it said.
yes.
And
That was just an example. So everyone's gonna be a little bit different.
okay, so you let's see. Add spoons or take away those?
Up to you, right? So does it? I mean, like making the meal sometimes it's tiring for people. Making the meal, right? Or and you can add spoons.
10 spoons?
Yeah,
Okay.
like taking a nap, you can add spoons. Like maybe taking a nap, you can get back half a spoon or a teaspoon.
That's a good sign. Yeah. 10 spoons back.
Yeah, 10 spoons back, right? You burn 5 spoons, but you
get to decide whether you're taking away spoons or adding spoons.
correct based on how you feel, right? And so perfect. And then here there are, as we talked about last week, there are different types of attention, right? And so depending on different kinds of attention, that could affect, the way that you pay attention to things. And this is incredibly important because we have to notice our triggers. Like when your amygdala is acting up, when you're getting emotional, when you're getting frustrated, when you're getting angry, right? Which is awesome because Pam talked about it earlier, is when it's a Harriet Lerner, The Dance of Anger. It's a book. And so in this book, she talks about how anger comes as a natural response to when your values are contradicting in a conversation with somebody or in an interaction with somebody. Because, like, for example, like when Sandra goes out and she sees someone being irresponsible with nature, like burning a tree, that is in contradiction, direct contradiction to her value of God's gift. And so the natural response to that is anger. And a part of that requires attention in order for her to notice that anger. And so we got to pay attention to anger, frustration, right? Because if we're not paying attention, we can't process what's happening and we can't make a logical decision about what to do about it. And then so what we're going to be talking about today is processing, right? So number 3 in the flow model, right? And so avoid processing difficulties, right? And so we talked about this earlier, right? Setting up your values. Setting up your mental health, right? Using L-theanine or sleep, right? We need to calm. We need to stay positive. We need to stay grateful. Linda was talking about being grateful, right? And then, of course, when I'm grateful for being alive, that leads to positivity. And you're actually able to center yourself, right? And so processing is, and so when we actually get to processing, right? None of those other processes work. So those are things like your memory won't work as clearly and your executive functions. And so those are things like planning, managing stress, for example. And so before we move forward, take a moment, right? So which of these strategies are you already using? And you can raise your hand if you will. So who's using alarms? Right? To-do lists, right? Can't miss reminders. And so these are things like putting the bag that you need tomorrow morning on the door handle so you can't leave without seeing the bag, right? Or the dry erase on the mirror, right? If I write on the mirror at night, I'm going to see it in the morning. There's no way for me to not see it in the morning. And so then we also talk about information processing. So like talking to yourself. And so this, right? So Heather, right? Katie, and I believe in one of the previous classes, we talked about talking to yourself. And I remember, right? This is also called egocentric speech, right? So egocentric speech is when you talk to yourself about what you're doing, like you narrate your life. I am washing the dishes right now. I'm applying the soap. I'm going circles, 1 circle, 2 circle, 3 circle, 4 circle. Oh, make sure I get that. Ooh, 6 circle, right? 7 circle, right? Washing my hands. I gotta count to 20, right? Means like you're talking to yourself. But that's called egocentric speech, which can actually be very helpful. I remember one veteran that I was working with a couple of months ago, where he actually had really poor memory. He would take pictures on his phone of everything so he wouldn't forget. And one of the things that he found to be very helpful, which I learned from all of you, is talking to yourself, narrating, saying, I'm putting my cell phone here. And so I'm putting my cell phone in the kitchen on the table. And then the next week he told me like, yeah, I don't forget things as much anymore, right? It's great. And so, yeah, Pam, you had something there? Yeah, being mindful, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm so glad you reminded us of that, talking to myself, because that's really helpful for me when my mind starts focusing on resentment, like that, and then it ends up like my amygdala starts taking over in a real subtle way. It's like my mind is on these repetitive tracks of resentment. And then that takes me away, that takes my mindfulness and my focus away from what's going on, what I'm doing. So thank you, Daniel. I'm going to start talking to myself again and, saying it out loud. So thank you.
Oh, look at you, funny. It's like, hey, what are you doing? This is an A&A conversation. Be your way out. Right? This is not a conversation for you. It's a conversation with me. Like, that's rude. No one's here talking to you. Yeah, yes, Katie. It was Katie.
I was in the bathroom, talking to myself, but really telling somebody off to myself. But just a little, if someone catches you talking to yourself, what I said when I came out of the bathroom, he said, "Are you in there talking to yourself?" I said, "No, I was singing." I said, "Just tell them you're singing."
Yeah, just tell them you're singing, right? And it's like I do it all the time too, right? And so an egocentric speech can be a very helpful cognitive strategy, right? Talking to yourself.
That's what I'll say to them. I'm going to say that. No, haven't you ever heard of egocentric speech? Like they're stupid or something,
Like you ain't never heard of that, huh?
Right.
Speech. Yeah, and so that's one way to like typically it's self-talk, self-narration is egocentric speech. It's a neuropsychology term, so that way you can impress people. And so great. And so the information processing theory, right? So we're all about information processing. And so for I think Rosie and anyone who else was in our music NMT class, was that last year? We had a song about this. And so oh yeah, Pam, you remember the song?
I wasn't even in the class, but I watched that video, and that song still sticks in my mind. Yeah. Memory starts in 5 stages, or something like that, Anyway, sorry.
No, that's perfect. That's exactly right. Yeah. So you remember it, like memory happens in 4 stages, 4 stages. First comes attention, then comes encoding, next comes consolidation, finally retrieval. Yeah. That's funny. I remember that song was stuck in my head too. It was a banger, that one.
Hey, Daniel, it's a good
Yeah.
thing you actually have a real job.
Yeah.
And you-
Oh, good to know that you still have your sense of humor, Katie.
Yeah.
And you did not take that away. Right. And so, I'll stick with the shower singing. I sound good in the shower. And so, right, first comes the attention, right? First we talk about alertness. And then the reason why this 90s like computer here is because it nicely illustrates the point, right? Encoding is basically putting information in your own words, right? This is what you have to use the keyboard to input to the computer in a language that it understands, right? When you press a keyboard, right, those all kinds of things with like the back coding and stuff to turn it into a pictographic image of a letter that you recognize, right? And so, I mean, there are keyboards that also type in Spanish and in Chinese and different languages. But for us, our QWERTY keyboard prints in English. And so encoding is putting the information in your own words. Right? That's the first step to improving your memory, right? Or improving your processing. And so think of like journaling. Journaling is a great, or taking notes, like Linda's taking notes, Victoria's taking notes, everyone's taking notes, right? So great, right? This is quite literally putting information in your own words, right? Because you're taking the information, you're processing it, you're chewing it up in your head, and you're writing it down in your own words, right? And then the second step is storage or consolidation, right? And so here, this is, in a CPU or a zip disk, if anyone remembers those, right? If people remember those. And so you're storing it into this storage piece here, right? And so because it's in your own words, you store it, right? And so when you store it, a big part of storing it and retrieving it is storing it in an organized fashion, right? So how many people, I mean, I know I'm super guilty of this, is all the folders in my documents folder have like documents nested folders, nested within folders, within folders, within folders, within folders. And then so unless if I don't have it organized, and who has that where their desktop is just files from when you downloaded them from whenever, and it's hard to find things, right? So think of your memory in that way, right? So if it's not organized and you need to find one document, like where is it? And so part of storage is organization, so that when you need to retrieve it, it is easier to find, right? And so here is a video explaining the information processing theory. And if you can't hear it, someone just say something. But I think everyone should hear it. All right, perfect. All right. Progressive forward movements towards something personally meaningful in the future gives us motivation in the present. And so much of that rings true, right? And that reminds me of that Nebraskan phrase that we have to say, right? Making decisions is easy, and you know what your value. There's nothing more Nebraskan than that. That's just how they used to say. And so, right. And so one of the things that you're talking about is the processing strategy. Talking to yourself, the egocentric speech reminds you of what's important to you and why you're doing it and what you're doing and why you're doing it. So that can also help you get less distracted by, external events like the air conditioning system that's happening in the background, or your internal thoughts of pain, and that's either physical pain or emotional pain, right? Yeah, or both, right? And then it also helps you to remember that you're completing a task, right? I'm, putting here, I'm folding the clothes, I'm washing, I'm wiping the plate before I'm putting it into the washing machine or the dishwasher, for example. And so, as we were saying, it might feel funny at first, right? But as Miss Kitty was saying, I was singing, right? And so, and the more you practice, the better and more natural it
I need to start it.
Go for it. Yes, sir.
Because I cannot write. And just kind of keep up. And I'm sharing with another brain injury survivor. It's really, it's serious for us. Very nice.
So the egocentric speech will help you remember where you're at, right? It will decrease the distraction from the external events as well as your internal events. So egocentric speech is a great processing strategy. It's also called self-talk. And then also self-talk also works well for a very brief, simple task. Like, did I turn off the iron? Did I close the garage door? Right? And so like talking to yourself out loud, right? I'm turning off the iron so I don't have to worry about burning down the house. Or it's Tuesday and I'm closing the garage door as I leave. And so here you're processing it in two modalities. So basically you're saying it out loud, you're hearing yourself say it out loud, then you're processing what you just heard yourself say. And so, of course, other strategies for processing could be taking advantage of your amygdala hijack, right? Your emotional center by talking to yourself about the consequences of forgetting. So if I don't mail this bill when I leave, I'll get a late charge or the lights won't turn on, right? And so saying yourself the consequences out loud is a great way for you to take advantage of your emotional processing, and then also hearing yourself say it out loud. So you're processing it multiple ways. Like if I don't get, I see a Heather and Pam, they have furry felines there, right? I miss my names very much. And so I used to tell myself, if I don't remember my Nims' cat food when I come home, he's going to be very upset at me. And so that would help me remember to get cat food before I came home. And so this is great seeing your feline friends there, Pam. And then so the slides will also be available through the link, and so we'll send the link via email as well. Yeah, check your spam. So now we're also another processing strategy. Sometimes people don't like journaling because they say, if I can't remember what happens at the end of the day, by the end of the day I forget. Well, then perfect. There is a strategy, an accommodation for that. We journal in pieces. So instead of waiting until the end of the day, you do it 2 times a day or 3 times a day, right? And so split your days into 8 to 12, 1 to 5, 6 to 10, right? Typically, I do this whenever I'm having meals, right? So like I'll do this like while I'm eating. With my non-dominant hand, I'm writing in my dominant hand. So that is also a cognitive exercise. And at the end of each period, stop what you're doing and write in your notebook. And then try to write as many details as possible. I mean, people try to say like, well, what do I write about? Well, write about everything that happened in that 8 to 12 time frame, with as many details as possible. And then you'll get to see, well, how much details do I actually remember? And how much any details do I not remember? And you'll notice just simply paying attention will increase your memories. Just paying attention, right, will increase your memories. Like we were saying, like the video was saying, when you're saying, when you're approaching a group of people and you're saying, oh, hi, my name is Daniel. Hi, my name is Daniel. Shake your hand, right? And then at the end, after everyone introduces themselves, I can't remember anyone's name, even though they just said it, right? And so it's not that my memory was poor, it's just that I wasn't paying attention. I was like, hi, my name's Daniel, like firm handshake, look in the eyes, yes, firm handshake, I need to give them my card, right? And so like, I'm thinking of all these other things, so I'm just not paying attention. And so and typically I can't remember people's names. So with that said, is just simply paying attention will increase your memories for what you did in every day. Yeah. Like, oh, hi, like, handshake, eye contact, deep voice, hello. Name is Daniel. Yeah, like, right, like, yeah, yeah, someone there. Yes, Daniel, hello. Yes,
God,
yes.
that's so cute. Okay, I'm going to talk like this. Okay, anyway, it just when you were talking about the example, Daniel, of introducing yourself, it really struck me that it's not always a matter of paying attention. It's a matter of deciding where your attention is going to be.
True.
Because when you were saying, hello, my name is Daniel, I remembered, like, when I'm meeting people, like, I'm nervous about meeting them, or like, do I want to introduce myself and speak up, so they hear me. So when I'm worried about that, then my attention is going there rather than having my attention be on their name. So, conscious attention to where my attention is going is really important. Just
Absolutely.
That was profound to me. So anyway, thanks. Okay.
Absolutely, right? That selective attention, right? We talked about that. Paying attention, and thank you for nicely illustrating that. Is we can kind of just see when you're worried can impact your attention. It's not that your memory is poor, it's like you're worrying. And so worrying, do I shake their hand? Am I coming off right? So I gotta worry about, like, okay, remember your name is Daniel, get it right this time, right? And so like you're worrying about certain things, worrying about your first impressions because you want to make good ones. And so how that can impact your memory in a very innocuous way, right? So now if you want to take that and extrapolate that to other more important things, we can see how worrying can really be the source of a lot of the difficulties in our memories. And so perfect. Thank you for modeling that. And so again, the information processing theory, right? I'm not gonna sing it because I'm gonna spare Miss Katie, right, for my singing. But we're gonna have the encoding, the storage or consolidation, and then the retrieval, right? And so this is the process for that third step.
Don't use the mouse.
Oh, the mouse is a whole nother thing. That's a whole nother thing, right? And so the attention and processing, right? So as we're kind of talking about, like in the introducing yourself, then actually paying attention during conversations is the key, right? How often do we get worried about what I'm going to say next versus what the person is actually saying, right? I gotta say there, like, worrying about what I'm going to say next, as opposed to, what the person's actually saying. And so part of that is also, as we're saying, under organizing. And in order to organize things and put them in your own words, you have to understand what's being communicated. And so, and if you're worrying about what you're going to say next, you're not really focused on understanding what's being said. And if you can't really focus on what's being understood and what's being said, you can't understand it. And if you don't understand it, you can't put it in your own words. It's not organized. You can't encode it. And so from a very, very initial early point is the worrying. And as we said, the worrying and the stress, right? If we take it back, that's what was the thing that predicted cognitive deficits in previous courses. It wasn't anxiety, it wasn't depression, it was stress, right? And it's the stress that impacted and predicted the rate of change in cognitive symptoms. So, coming down to it's maybe the management of stress. And then some survivors will say, like, no, it's not all in my head. Like, no, that's not what I'm saying at all. That's not what I'm saying at all. The whole distinction between psychogenic and neurogenic, as we were talking about, is an artificial distinction. It's all the same nervous system. It's all the same brain. And so if managing stress is what the brain does, well, what happens when the thing that manages the stress is the thing with the problem? And so, right? And then we kind of see the downstream effects of that. And that's, yeah, what a conundrum indeed. That's right, brother. And so, and then the problem is like providers, that it's not understood, it's not grasped, because until you have one,
I heard years and years ago that we only have the capability to focus on one thing at a time.
exactly.
Our brain is only capable on focusing and thinking about one thing at a time. But we can toggle back and forth between very quickly. And our brains have been through an awful lot. Face it.
Absolutely.
We've all been damaged. And who's to say that one person's ability to toggle back and forth is not now impaired? It may be, and somebody else's may not be. We don't know.
Yeah. And exactly as we were saying, and it's slower, right? Processing speed is the fingerprint, right?
Yeah.
Being able to switch, that shift back and forth, right? That requires processing speed. And so, like Sandra was saying earlier, the connection between the short term and the long term, right? It's memories got to be short term first before they become long term, right? Like, even the most significant of life events, when they happened, they were in the short term. And it's because, a lot of these emotional life events, because we recall them so many times, like, oh, those are typically, oh, do you remember when you graduated? When you got married? Those are things that you recall. And because you recall them over and over again, they become stronger and stronger memories, right? As we were discussing. But all of those really, really strong foundational memories started off at one point as a short-term memory.
There's an additional fact, very important fact. I love psychology. My surgeon was a very respected psychologist, by the way, psychologist, long-term. But we almost got there. Anyway, so an important factor in memory is the emotional content, the emotional importance of something, details, some event.
Sure.
So you remember all the big deals, all the catastrophes, probably. In our case, for TBIs, our brain shuts down, and we do not. The brain and self-defense does not want to remember all the catastrophe, all the injury, all the pain. So that's one thing that's common about many of us. But back to my main point was emotional load is a big part of the memory, but in some cases, back to circling back, it's just too much load, too much emotional load. So some of us gradually remember, over time, remember what happened to us in a major accident. But for a while, we do not remember for a while, it's self-defense.
Like you
It's a
D, right?
PTSD, exactly.
Yes, yes, I want to comment about PTSD. I have a lot of memories of my childhood because it was a happy childhood. But there was something that happened to me, and it had a link to do with my depression. Got with this guy, he was a Vietnam vet and worked with PTSD on vets. And he got with me, and I figured out that my PTSD came from the attempted kidnapping of me when I was 6 years old. And I had drugged that all through into my adult life. And he helped me, and it took about a year for us to figure out what it was, what had happened. And what I find so interesting about it is when I finally acknowledged, yes, I do have PTSD. The memory of this guy that tried it came back so clear. I knew what kind of car, I knew he was a very handsome guy, what kind of clothes he had on, all that kind of stuff. And the car, it was very interesting because the car, that style of car, they only produced, I think it was only about 4 years. And it was in that time that I had that attempted kidnapping on me. But it's weird what your memory can do and can recall. And I was well into my 30s, almost 40s, when I had to go through that process. But
Okay, so absolutely, right? So and so those experiences, and so in about 5 minutes we're gonna have a group. So for those kind of experiences, that's kind of what the group is for afterwards. So that will process a lot, because there's a lot of sounds like there's a lot of traumatic experiences. Let's just get through here. I see you, Heather, and let's get through here. And so again, the cognitive skills are all built on each other using this river flow model. And so right here, alertness, this is your spoons, your energy, your sleep. Attention, this is the selective attention that Pam was talking about earlier. And then processing, this is what we talked about all today, where it's first the encoding, the storage, and then the retrieval. And then we see that if there's a blockage at any one of these points, particularly in the processing, memory and the executive functioning processes don't work because there's a blockage higher up in the process. Yeah. And so, right, and all those things happen there. So what we're talking about for next week is now we're going to get to memory, right? And so, and before we get to memory, before we end today, so remember, pursue your values and your goals, right? And so part of that, Linda was talking about, service in service to the TBI community, right? And same with Bruce, and like service to the TBI community. And so that's where I'm at as well, is service to the TBI community. And so announcement, TBI Advisory Board, the next subcommittee meeting is this Tuesday, 10/11, from 9 to 3 at this link. And I'll put it in the chat. And then also the call-in information, and then the agenda at the bottom. So I'm going to put that information in the chat once we end today. And so with that said, see you next Saturday, 11/1. It's fantastic. Have a fantastic week. And then, yes, we will see you all then. And I'll put the information in the chat right now.
It will
Thank
also
you.
be in the newsletter, Daniel.